the girl shouted. "Daddy, I found her sleeping on the street. Can she be my sister?" The billionaire father looked at the girl and did something unbelievable. The diner was nearly empty when Declan Rhodes helped Ember down from the high chair. The 5-year-old girl was still chewing on her last French fry, her fingers sticky with ketchup. A few crumbs were stuck to her pink shirt with its unicorn designs. "All done, Daddy? All done, sweetie." Declan paid the bill and held his daughter's hand. The waitress waved at Ember, who waved back with a toothless smile. Outside, the night air was cool. The streets had few cars, and the yellow lights from the street lamps created circles on the wet asphalt from a rain that had already passed. It was an ordinary, unremarkable Thursday. They walked toward the car parked 2 blocks away. Ember swung her little pink purse, humming a song she learned in school about birds and clouds. Declan thought about the next day's work, the bills to pay, the 9 a.m. meeting he didn't want to face, the normal things that occupied his mind since he learned to live on autopilot. That's when they saw her. A small figure was huddled on the sidewalk, leaning against a dark brick wall. It was a girl about Ember's age, maybe a little smaller. She was sleeping, clutching a doll that looked like it had seen better days. The dress was torn in several places, one arm loose, hanging as if it were broken. The doll's hair was tangled and dirty. Declan stopped. Ember stopped too. "Daddy!" His daughter's voice was quiet, almost a whisper. She looked at the girl on the sidewalk with that expression kids make when they see something they can't quite understand, a mixture of curiosity and concern. "Daddy, can she be my sister?" The words hit Declan like a punch to the gut. He looked at Ember, then at the sleeping girl, then back at Ember again. His daughter's eyes were wide, shining under the streetlight, waiting for an answer he didn't know how to give. Declan Rhodes was not a man of impulse. Since losing his wife 2 years ago, he lived in a carefully planned routine. Work, home, Ember, sleep. Work, home, Ember, sleep. No surprises, no complications, nothing that could upset the fragile balance he had managed to build. It was safer that way. But something about Ember's question stirred him. Maybe it was the way the girl held the doll, as if it were the most precious thing in the world. Maybe it was the way her shoulders rose and fell slowly, showing she was alive, but so small and alone in the cold night. Or maybe it was simply Ember's innocence, seeing a child in need and thinking of the most natural thing in the world, family. "Wait here." Declan let go of Ember's hand and approached the girl. His footsteps made a sound in the quiet street. He knelt slowly, trying not to be startling. Up close, she seemed even smaller. Her clothes were dirty, far too big for her thin body. "Hey!" The girl didn't move. Declan gently touched her shoulder, feeling how cold she was even through the worn-out jacket. "Hey, little one." She opened her eyes all at once, startled. They were dark eyes, too large for her thin face. For a second, she looked ready to run, her body shrinking further against the wall. "It's okay," Declan said, in the softest voice he could manage. "It's okay. Are you cold?" The girl looked at him, then at Ember, who had come closer despite being told to stay put. Ember had this ability to ignore orders when she thought something more important was happening. "What's your name?" Ember asked, as if they were chatting on the school playground during recess. The girl didn't answer. She just hugged the doll tighter against her chest, her small fingers gripping what was left of the fabric. Declan felt something strange happening inside him, something he hadn't felt in a long time, as if a dormant part of him was waking up. It was like a door that had been locked for years was being pushed open from the inside, slowly giving way. "Do you want to come with us?" The words came out before he could think them through. "Just for tonight." Ember smiled, that smile that lit up her whole face. The girl looked from one to the other, confused, as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. "My house is warm," Ember said, crouching down to be at the other girl's level. "And there's food and soft blankets." It was the word food that made the difference. The girl nodded slowly, still wary, but something in Ember's voice seemed to have reached her. The walk to the car was silent. The girl walked between them, still holding the doll, looking around as if expecting someone to stop her. Declan opened the back door and helped them both in, carefully fastening their seatbelts. In the back seat, Ember started chattering about school, her favorite cartoons, her favorite colors, the neighbor's cat that always ran into their yard. The girl listened without saying a word, but her eyes followed every word, as if recording everything in her memory. During the drive home, Declan wondered what the hell he was doing. He didn't know this child. He didn't know where she came from, why she was alone, if anyone was looking for her. But every time he glanced in the rearview mirror and saw the two little faces in the back seat, Ember animated, gesturing, and the other girl listening intently, something inside him calmed down. At home, Declan went straight to the kitchen. He heated up a can of vegetable soup, cut generous slices of fresh bread, and washed some red apples. He put everything on a tray and took it to the living room table, where the light was softer. "What's your name?" he asked as he served the soup into a deep bowl, making sure it wasn't too hot. "June," she answered quietly. It was the first word she had said since waking up on the sidewalk. "June is a pretty name," Ember said, clapping her hands. "June, June, June. It sounds like music. It sounds like a princess's name." June almost smiled. The corner of her mouth curved up just a little, as if she hadn't remembered how to smile properly for a long time. She ate slowly, as if she didn't want the food to end. Declan noticed how she held the bread with both hands, protecting it, checking to make sure it was really hers. Ember ate an apple and talked to herself, telling stories that mixed things from school with things she saw on TV, creating impossible adventures with unicorns and astronauts. After the food, Declan prepared a bath. The tub filled with warm water and lavender-scented bubbles. He got a clean, soft towel and some of Ember's clothes that might fit, a small pair of pajamas that had been stored in a drawer since Ember was smaller. "Can you take a bath by yourself?" he asked. June nodded, looking at the bubbly water as if it was something magical. "Ember will be right here if you need anything." While June was bathing, Declan made up the guest room he hadn't used in months. He changed the sheets for fresh-smelling ones, arranged 2 extra pillows, and turned on a lamp that cast a soft, welcoming light. Ember brought one of her favorite stuffed animals, a brown bear with a red tie. "So she won't be alone," she explained, placing the bear carefully on the bed. When June came out of the bathroom, she looked like a different child. Her clean hair shone under the light. The clothes were too big, but smelled of fabric softener. She was still holding the ragged doll, now also cleaner. "Your room is here," Declan said, showing her the made-up bed. June entered slowly, looking at everything with wide eyes. She touched the sheet, the pillow, the stuffed animal Ember had left. She ran her fingers over the soft fabric, as if she had never felt anything like it. "Good night, June," Ember said, giving her a little kiss on the cheek. "Good night," June whispered back, her voice still small, but less frightened. Declan turned off the light and closed the door slowly. In the hallway, he paused for a moment, listening to the silence. For the first time in a long time, the house didn't feel empty. That night, after putting Ember to bed and reading her a story about a brave princess, Declan sat in the kitchen with a cup of coffee. He thought about his daughter's question, "Can she be my sister?" He thought about June sleeping in the next room, probably the first peaceful night's sleep she'd had in a long time. He didn't know what would come next. He didn't know if he was doing the right thing. But when he went to check on June before going to bed and saw her sleeping, hugging both the ragged doll and Ember's teddy bear, Declan knew that something important had changed, for all of them. Declan woke up early, as always. For a moment, lying in bed, he almost forgot what had happened the night before. But then he heard a soft noise from the hallway, small, careful footsteps. June was awake. He got up and went to the kitchen. The girl was standing in the doorway, still in her pajamas, holding the ragged doll. She was looking at everything as if she were in a museum, afraid to touch anything. "Good morning," Declan said, trying to use the same gentle tone from the night before. June nodded but didn't speak. "Did you sleep well?" Another nod. Her eyes scanned the kitchen, the cabinets, the refrigerator, the table, the window with yellow curtains. Everything seemed new to her. Declan started making breakfast. Toast, jam, warm milk. Simple things. June sat in a chair and watched his every move. When he placed the plate in front of her, she looked at it as if she couldn't believe it was for her. "You can eat," he said. June picked up the toast and took a small bite, then another. She chewed slowly, savoring each piece as if it were special. Ember appeared in the kitchen, still sleepy, her hair a mess. When she saw June, her face lit up. "June, you stayed." June smiled slightly. It was a shy smile, but it was a smile. "Daddy, can she play with my toys?" "Of course," Declan said, pouring milk for Ember. After breakfast, Ember took June to her room. Declan listened to their voices, mostly Ember's, explaining each toy, each book, every single thing she had. June spoke little, but she answered with yes and no when Ember asked something. He stood at the door, watching. Ember showed her the box of crayons, the puzzles, the dolls all neatly arranged on a shelf. June touched everything carefully, as if she were afraid of breaking it. "This one is Sophia," Ember said, picking up a doll with curly hair. "She's a doctor." "And this is Maria, who is a teacher. Which one do you want?" June pointed to a small doll in a blue dress. "Lila, good choice. She's a ballerina." Declan moved away from the door. Seeing the two of them together stirred something in him he couldn't explain. It was like watching Ember be an older sister, even though she was the same age as June. Careful, generous, trying to include the other girl in everything. During the morning, they played on the living room rug. Ember made up elaborate stories with the dolls, and June listened, sometimes moving her doll from one side to the other. She didn't talk much, but she paid attention to every word. "Lila wants to be friends with Sophia," Ember said, making the dolls hug. "They're going to have adventures together." June nodded and made her doll wave to the others. At lunchtime, Declan made sandwiches. June ate hers slowly, watching Ember chatter about school, her friends, and the teacher who had a cat named Whiskers. "June, do you go to school?" Ember asked. June shook her head. "Why not?" June shrugged. Declan realized she either didn't know how to explain or didn't want to. "Maybe she can go to my school," Ember said, looking at her father with hope. Declan didn't know what to say. He nodded, but his mind was racing. School meant documents, records, questions he didn't know how to answer. In the afternoon, while June napped on the sofa, hugging her ragged doll, Ember approached her father. "Is she going to stay with us?" "I don't know, sweetie. I want her to stay. I know. She was all alone, Daddy, like I would be if you weren't here." The question hit Declan hard. He pulled Ember into a hug. "You will never be alone." "I promise. And June?" Declan looked at the sleeping girl. In her sleep, she looked even smaller, more fragile, a child who clearly needed care, safety, someone to look out for her. "We'll see," was all he could say. When June woke up, Ember was drawing at the kitchen table. She offered paper and crayons to June, who accepted shyly. Ember drew a house with 3 people in front, 2 small, 1 big. June drew abstract shapes, colors mixed together without forming anything specific. "How beautiful," Ember said, looking at June's drawing with genuine admiration. June smiled again, more openly this time. During dinner, there was more silence than conversation. June ate, watched, and listened to Ember talk about a movie she had seen. Occasionally, she would nod or shake her head when Ember asked if she liked something. Declan felt lost. He knew how to take care of Ember because he had known her since she was born. He knew when she was tired, hungry, sad, happy. With June, everything was new. He didn't know how to interpret her silences, didn't know if he was doing the right things. But he watched, and what he saw was a girl who was clearly traumatized, but was beginning to trust. Small signs, the way she no longer jumped when someone approached, how she accepted food without hesitation, how she looked at Ember with something like affection. After dinner, at bath time, June went by herself again. Ember stayed outside the door, talking through it, telling bad jokes she learned at school. Declan heard June laugh, a quiet, almost imperceptible sound, but it was a laugh. At bedtime, Ember insisted on saying goodnight to June first. She went into the guest room where June was lying down, the teddy bear on one side, the ragged doll on the other. "Good night, June." "Good night, Ember." Ember stood there for a moment, as if she wanted to say something else. Then she leaned down and gave June a kiss on the forehead. "Good night, little sister." Declan was in the hallway, out of their sight, but he heard everything. The word little sister came so naturally from Ember's mouth, so full of affection, that he felt his chest tighten. June didn't reply, but Declan saw her smile in the dark. After putting Ember to bed, he went back to check on June. She was awake, staring at the ceiling. "Everything okay?" he asked quietly. "Yes." "Do you need anything?" "No." He was about to leave when she spoke again. "Thank you." Two small words, but they carried so much weight. Declan nodded, even though he knew she couldn't see him in the dark. "Sleep well, June." That night, lying in his own bed, Declan thought about the day that had passed. June had barely spoken, but her presence was already changing the dynamic of the house. Ember was more lively, more caring, more generous, and he himself was paying attention to things that used to go unnoticed. The way someone held a fork, looked out a window, moved through a space. The silence of the house was no longer empty. It was full of possibilities, of small moments, of a child learning to trust again. And for the first time in 2 years, Declan Rhodes felt that maybe he was doing something truly important. It was Sunday afternoon. The sun streamed through the living room window, creating golden squares on the rug where Ember and June were playing. It had been 3 days since June arrived, and a gentle routine had formed. Breakfast together, playtime, lunch, a nap for June while Ember drew, and then more time together until dinner. Declan was in the kitchen, putting away the groceries he had bought that morning. He could hear the girls' voices in the living room, mostly Ember's, as usual, but also June responding with single words and short phrases. "Want to play house?" Ember asked, setting up a scene with dolls and miniature furniture. "Okay." June had started to talk a little more each day. Not a lot, but enough for Ember to maintain conversations that were previously monologues. "You can be the mommy and I'll be the daughter," Ember suggested. June picked up a doll and placed it in a tiny high chair. "Is she a baby?" "She is, and she needs to eat." Ember picked up a toy spoon. "Mommy, what are we going to feed her?" June pretended to think. "Soup and bread." "Good idea." They played in silence for a few minutes. Declan listened to the soft sounds of toys being moved, the low voices creating dialogues for the dolls. It was a sound he was learning to love, the house full of childish life. Then he heard June speak, her voice more serious than usual. "Ember." "Yeah." "Do you have a mommy?" Declan stopped putting away the groceries. Ember was quiet for a moment before answering. "I used to. She died when I was little. Now I only have Daddy." "Oh." Another silence. Declan moved closer to the kitchen doorway but stayed hidden. He didn't want to interrupt, but something in the tone of the conversation put him on alert. "What about you?" Ember asked. "Do you have a mommy and a daddy?" June took a long time to answer. When she spoke, her voice was different, softer, sadder. "I used to. Did they die too?" "My parents died in an accident." The words came out slowly, as if June were forcing each one out. "After that, nobody wanted me anymore." Declan felt as if someone had punched him in the stomach. He leaned against the wall, trying to process what he had just heard. "Nobody wanted you." Ember's voice was full of indignation. "But why?" "I don't know. I went to an aunt's house, then to another family, then another." June paused for a moment. "They always said it was too hard, that I was too much trouble." "You're not trouble," Ember said firmly. "You're quiet and sweet." "I tried to be, but they always sent me away." Declan closed his eyes. A 5-year-old child being rejected by family after family, being made to believe she was problematic, that she was a burden, that she didn't deserve to be wanted. "Is that why you were on the street?" Ember asked. "The last family left me somewhere. They said someone would come take care of me, but nobody showed up. I waited a long time. Then I started walking." "How long were you alone?" "I don't know. A lot of days." Ember was quiet. Declan could imagine his daughter processing all that information, trying to understand how a child her age could go through all that. "June, yeah, I want you to stay here. Forever." June didn't answer, but Declan heard a sound that might have been a muffled sob. "Don't cry," Ember said, and Declan knew she was hugging June. "You have a family now, me and Daddy. We like you." "You really do?" "We do. I love you, June. You're my sister now." Declan moved away from the door and went back to the kitchen, but he couldn't continue putting away the groceries. He stood still, looking out the window without seeing anything. June's words echoed in his head. "Nobody wanted me anymore." How was that possible? How could families take in a child traumatized by the loss of her parents and just give up on her? He thought of Ember, of how lucky he was to be the father of such a generous, loving little girl, and he thought of June, who even after so much rejection was still capable of trusting, of accepting affection, of playing like a normal child. An hour later, Ember appeared in the kitchen. Her eyes were red. "Daddy?" "Yes, sweetie. June told me something really sad." Declan knelt to her level. "What was it?" "Her parents died, and then nobody wanted to take care of her." Ember's voice trembled. "That's why she was on the street, all alone." Declan pulled his daughter into a hug. "That must have been very hard for her. She cried, 'Daddy,' and I cried too." "Where is she now?" "In her room, sleeping. I covered her with the blanket and left the bear." Declan kissed Ember's head. "You're a very good sister. Can she stay with us? Forever?" "We'll see, my love. I don't want her to leave. She's already had to leave so many places." "I know." Ember pulled away and looked into her father's eyes. "Do you promise you'll try?" Declan looked at his 5-year-old daughter, who was asking him to save another child. How could he say no? "I promise I'll try." "Thank you, Daddy." That night, after dinner, after Ember had gone to bed, Declan knocked softly on June's bedroom door. She was awake, lying on her side, hugging the ragged doll. "Can I come in?" She nodded. Declan sat on the edge of the bed. June watched him with those big eyes, waiting. He didn't quite know what to say. He wasn't good with words when it came to feelings. "Ember told me about your parents," he said finally. June didn't answer, but he saw her swallow hard. "I'm sorry you went through all that. It wasn't your fault. It wasn't anyone's fault. Sometimes bad things happen, and there's no explanation." June kept looking at him, as if trying to decide if she could trust what he was saying. "I know you've heard promises before," Declan continued. "I know other people said they would take care of you and then changed their minds. They said I was too much trouble. You are not trouble, June. You're a good girl who has been through things that are too hard for someone your age." Declan took a deep breath. "You are safe here. I promise." June looked at him for a long time. Declan saw something change in her eyes. The tension that was always there, the readiness to run or hide, began to dissolve. "You really promise?" "I really promise." June nodded slowly. "Okay. Good night, June." "Good night." Declan left the room and closed the door softly. In the hallway, he paused for a moment. He had just made a promise he didn't know if he could keep. He knew nothing about adoption, about legal processes, about how an abandoned child officially became part of a family. But he knew one thing. He was going to try. For June, for Ember, and maybe for himself too. Because for the first time in a long time, his house truly felt like a home. A week had passed since the conversation in June's room. A week that changed everything in the Rhodes house, even if no one had said it out loud. Mornings now began with 2 pairs of little feet running down the hallway. Ember would wake up first, as always, but instead of going straight to the kitchen, she would stop at June's door. "Psst, June, are you awake?" "I'm awake. Let's go have breakfast." And off they would go, hand in hand, June still with the ragged doll under her arm, Ember chattering about what they were going to do that day. Declan would find them in the kitchen, June sitting in her chair because now she had a chair, always the same one, next to Ember. They would wait for him to make breakfast as if it were the most normal thing in the world. "Good morning, Daddy," Ember would say. "Good morning," June would repeat more quietly, but with a small smile that wasn't there that first morning. Routines formed naturally. After breakfast, while Declan cleaned the kitchen, the girls would go to the living room. June now knew all of Ember's toys, and Ember knew June's ways, that she liked soft colors, that she preferred puzzles to dolls, that she was fascinated when Ember read stories aloud. "Do you know how to read?" June asked one of those mornings. "Some words." "My daddy taught me. Can you teach me?" "Of course." And so the reading lessons began. Ember took her simplest books and sat next to June on the sofa. She would point to each word, pronounce it slowly, and wait for June to repeat it. It was like watching two teachers playing school, but with the seriousness of someone who really wanted to learn and to teach. Declan stopped working for a few mornings just to watch. He would call his office, say he was dealing with family matters, that he'd be in later. It was a lie and the truth at the same time. He was dealing with family matters, only the matters were figuring out how to be a father to 2 children instead of 1. "Daddy, look," Ember called to him one Tuesday. June read cat all by herself. June was red with pride, pointing at the word in the book. C-A-T, cat. "Very good, June," Declan said, and he realized he was smiling. A big, genuine smile that hadn't appeared on his face in a long time. Afternoons became drawing time. Ember had always loved to draw, but now she had company. June drew slowly, very carefully, as if every line was important. In the beginning, she only made abstract shapes, circles and lines that didn't form anything specific. But gradually, houses, trees, and human figures began to appear. "Let's draw our family," Ember suggested on a rainy Thursday. They sat at the kitchen table with paper and crayons spread out. Ember finished her drawing quickly. 3 stick figures in front of a house, a yellow sun in the corner, clouds that looked like cotton balls. June took longer. Declan was making lunch, but he occasionally glanced over their shoulders. June drew with her tongue sticking out, concentrating. She drew 3 figures too, but with more detail. Different hair for each one, colorful clothes, hands that actually connected. "Done," she said finally. Ember looked at the drawing and clapped. "It's beautiful. It's the 3 of us." "It is," said June. "This is our heart." Declan stopped stirring the soup. What do you mean, June?" She pointed to the drawing, specifically to the connected hands of the 3 figures. "Here, our hands together. It's our heart." Ember nodded, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "Of course, when we hold hands, our hearts are together too." Declan looked at the drawing for a long time. 3 people holding hands, smiling, in front of a house with square windows and a red door. It was simple, made with crayons by a 5-year-old, but it carried a weight he hadn't expected. "Can I hang it on the fridge?" he asked. June nodded, happy. That afternoon, after sticking the drawing to the refrigerator door with colorful magnets, Declan realized he was laughing. June had told a bad joke that Ember had taught her, something about a fish that couldn't swim, and he laughed. It wasn't a polite smile or a forced laugh. It was a real, deep-from-the-chest laugh. The girls looked at him, surprised, then started laughing too, not quite sure why. And there the 3 of them stood in the kitchen, laughing at a silly joke on a rainy Thursday. At night, during dinner, conversations flowed more easily. June asked questions about everything: why the sky got dark, how plants grew, if all cats knew how to meow. Ember answered with the authority of a 5-year-old who knew everything about the world. Declan filled in the answers when necessary, but mostly he just listened. "Daddy," Ember said during Friday's dinner, "you're happier." "Am I?" "You are. You laugh more, and you play with us more." Declan looked at the 2 girls sitting at the table. Ember with tomato sauce at the corner of her mouth. June chewing slowly as always, but relaxed. At home. "I think I am," he said. "It's because there are 3 of us now," June said, as if it were that simple. And maybe it was that simple. That night, after putting the girls to bed, now June waited for Ember to say goodnight first, and Ember always whispered, "Good night, little sister," before going to her own room. Declan stood looking at the drawing on the fridge. 3 people holding hands. The heart of the family, according to June. He touched the paper carefully, as if it were something fragile and precious. And maybe it was. It was the first time in 2 years he saw himself as part of something bigger than just him and Ember. The first time the word family wasn't accompanied by a pang of pain for his wife's absence. June was right. There were 3 of them now, and for the first time since he lost his wife, Declan Rhodes felt truly alive. It was Monday morning. The girls were in the living room, Ember teaching June how to assemble a farm animal puzzle. Declan was in the kitchen, staring at the phone in his hand for 10 minutes. 2 weeks. June had been with them for 2 weeks, and he still hadn't called anyone. He hadn't notified the authorities, hadn't tried to find out if anyone was looking for her, hadn't done anything official. He knew he was wrong. He knew he should have called on the first day, maybe even before bringing June home. But every time he thought about making the call, he would look at the girls playing together and postpone it a little longer. He couldn't postpone it anymore. Declan found the number for social services online and dialed before he could change his mind. Social services, good morning, how can I help you? Hi, I need to speak to someone about a child. 1 moment, please. The hold music played for 2 minutes that felt like an hour. Declan could hear the girls' voices in the living room, Ember explaining where each puzzle piece should go. Hello, this is Sandra Miller, social worker. How can I help you? Declan took a deep breath. My name is Declan Rhodes. I found a child, a 5-year-old girl. She's been with me for a few days. A few days? How many exactly? 2 weeks. Silence on the other end of the line. Mr. Rhodes, where did you find this child? On the street. She was sleeping on the sidewalk, alone. I couldn't just leave her there. I understand. And you didn't notify the authorities? No, She was scared. I thought I'd wait a bit, see if anyone showed up looking for her. Mr. Rhodes, you need to understand that there are protocols for these situations. The child could be missing, could have family looking for her. She told me she doesn't have a family, that her parents died and nobody else wanted her. Another silence. Declan could hear the shuffling of paper on the other end, as if the social worker was taking notes. What is the child's name? June. Just June. She didn't tell me her last name. All right. Mr. Rhodes, she's been with me for days. What do I do? The question came out more desperate than he intended. Declan heard the social worker sigh. Then first, I need you to come to our office with the child. We need to check the records, see if she's on the list of missing children. Then, we need to notify the proper authorities and assess the situation. And what if she's not on any list? Even so, there are procedures. The child needs documentation, needs to be evaluated by professionals, needs an official temporary home while we investigate. A temporary home, but she already has a temporary home. Here. Mr. Rhodes, I understand your concern, but you are not related to the child. You don't have legal custody. Technically, this could be considered... Considered what? Well, kidnapping. The word hit Declan like a slap. Kidnapping. I saved her from the street. I know, and I'm sure your intentions are good, but there are procedures that exist to protect children. And to protect people like you as well. Declan glanced toward the living room, where he could see June pointing to a puzzle piece while Ember clapped. What do I need to do? First, bring the child here this afternoon. We'll file a report, take photos, check our database. Then we'll evaluate the options. What kind of options? A temporary foster home, a foster family, or if you have a real interest in keeping her, we can discuss the procedures for temporary custody. I am interested. Then we'll talk about that as well. But first, we need to follow the legal protocols. Declan wrote down the address, the time, the things he needed to bring. The social worker was patient, explained each step, but he could barely concentrate. His mind was racing, imagining June being taken away by strangers, placed in a foster home, separated from Ember. Mr. Rhodes, yes, I understand this is difficult, but it's important that we do everything correctly for the child's best interests. I know. And Mr. Rhodes, from what you've told me, it seems you really care about her. That counts for a lot in our process. After hanging up, Declan sat at the kitchen table, looking at his notes. A list of documents, addresses, times, bureaucratic steps that would decide June's future. He didn't hear the footsteps in the hallway. He didn't realize June had left the living room and was standing in the kitchen doorway until she spoke. Are you going to send me away? Declan turned, startled. June was standing there, the ragged doll in her arm, her eyes wide and scared. Ember appeared behind her. What's wrong? Ember asked. I heard you talking on the phone, June said, her voice trembling, about a foster home, about taking me away. Declan knelt to their level. June, I don't want to send you away. But I have to do things the right way, the legal way. Every time someone talked about doing things the right way, I had to leave, June said. Ember stood in front of June, like a protective shield. She's not leaving. Ember? No, Daddy, she's not. Ember turned to June and held her hands. You're going to stay with us. I promise, but he was on the phone. It doesn't matter what he said. You're my sister now. Sisters don't get separated. June looked from Ember to Declan, confused and scared. But what if they say I have to go? Then I'll go with you, Ember said firmly. If you go, I go too. Ember, that's not how it works. Then how does it work? Ember looked at her father, her eyes shining with anger. You said you would try to keep her here. You promised. Declan felt the weight of the situation crashing down on him. On one side, a child who had been rejected so many times that she expected to be abandoned again. On the other, his daughter who had found a sister and wasn't going to accept losing her without a fight. Listen, he said, trying to keep his voice calm. I am not giving up on June, but there are rules, laws that I have to follow. The social worker is going to help us do everything the right way. What if she says I can't stay? June asked. Sounds then we'll fight, Declan said. We'll do whatever it takes, I promise. Declan looked at June, at her scared but hopeful eyes, then at Ember, who was determined to protect her sister at any cost. I promise, he said, we'll fight to stay together. June nodded slowly. Ember pulled her into a hug. See? I told you you were staying. Later that afternoon, Declan was in the car with the two girls, driving to the social services office. June was quiet in the back seat, holding her ragged doll. Ember held her hand, whispering words of encouragement. It's going to be okay, Ember was saying. You'll see. Declan glanced in the rearview mirror and saw June nod, but her eyes were filled with fear. He gripped the steering wheel tightly and pressed the accelerator a little harder. It didn't matter how many papers he had to sign, how many meetings he had to attend, how many questions he had to answer. He was going to do whatever it took to keep his family together. Because there were 3 of them now, and he wasn't going to let anyone change that. Saturday morning. Declan was in the kitchen, washing the breakfast dishes, when he heard laughter coming from the yard. He stopped what he was doing and looked out the window. June and Ember were in the backyard, playing tag among the trees. June was running with the ragged doll under her arm, laughing loudly as Ember chased her. It was the first time Declan had seen June run like that, free, without looking over her shoulder in fear. Got you, Ember shouted, tagging June on the shoulder. Now I'm it, June said, and ran after Ember. Declan leaned against the sink, watching. June was smiling. A real smile, one that lit up her whole face and made her eyes sparkle. It wasn't the shy, careful smile she gave when someone spoke to her. It was the smile of a child who was genuinely happy. Ember stopped running and threw herself onto the grass, laughing and out of breath. June flopped down beside her. The two of them lay there, looking up at the cloudless blue sky. Should we sing? Ember suggested. What song? The one about the rainbow I learned at school. Ember began to sing in her childish voice, off-key but full of joy. June listened to the first verse, then began to hum along softly. She didn't know the words very well, but she made up words that rhymed, making Ember laugh even more. Declan just stood there, listening. There was something hypnotic about the scene. 2 5-year-old girls singing in the yard on a Saturday morning, unhurried, carefree, simply existing in the moment. Suddenly, he felt something strange happening in his chest, a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time. The weight he had carried since losing his wife, which had only increased since June arrived with all the legal complications, began to dissolve. There were his daughters, because he now thought of them in the plural, his daughters, being normal kids on a normal Saturday. It didn't matter what the social worker had said on Monday. It didn't matter the papers he had to sign or the meetings he would have to face. In that moment, they were a family. Declan left the kitchen and went into the yard. The girls saw him approaching and waved. "Daddy, come sing with us," Ember said. "I don't know the song." "We'll teach you," said June, and Declan realized she had said Daddy, along with Ember, as if it were natural. He sat on the grass beside them. Ember and June sang the rainbow song 2 more times, teaching him each verse. Declan tried to follow along, laughing at his own mistakes and the girls' infinite patience in correcting him. "Now you know it," Ember declared when he finally managed to sing a whole verse without messing up. "I'm a great student," Declan said. "Yes, you are," June agreed seriously, as if she were evaluating his performance. They stayed there for a few more minutes, just enjoying the sun and the gentle breeze. Declan looked at his watch and saw it was still 10 in the morning. A whole day ahead, with no commitments, no obligations. "How about we go for an outing?" he asked, surprised by his own spontaneity. "Where to?" Ember wanted to know. "To the park. We can take a bike, play on the playground." "Does June know how to ride a bike?" Ember asked. June shook her head. "I've never tried." "Then we'll teach you," Ember said, jumping to her feet. "Daddy, you can teach June how to ride a bike." "Yes, I can." June looked at him with a mix of excitement and nervousness. "I won't be able to do it." "You will," Declan said. "Ember thought she couldn't do it either when I taught her." "It's true," Ember confirmed. "I fell like 10 times, but then I learned. What if I fall?" "Then you get up and try again," Ember said, as if it were obvious. "That's how it works." 20 minutes later, they were in the car on the way to the park. Declan had put Ember's small bicycle in the trunk, along with knee pads and helmets. The girls chatted excitedly in the back seat, planning everything they were going to do. "First the bike, then the slide, then the swings," Ember listed. "And if there's time, we can feed the ducks," June added. "There are ducks?" Declan asked. "There are, Ember told me." At the park, Declan held the bike while June balanced on the seat. Ember ran alongside, shouting instructions. "Pedal, June! Don't stop pedaling!" June pedaled hard, concentrating, her tongue sticking out. Declan ran behind the bike, holding the handlebars. "Am I doing it?" June asked. "You're doing it," Declan said, and slowly let go of the handlebars. June pedaled on her own for 10 feet before realizing Declan was no longer holding on. When she noticed, she was so surprised that she braked abruptly and almost fell. Declan caught her before she did. "I rode by myself," June shouted, euphoric. "You did," Ember confirmed, clapping. They spent an hour at the playground. June discovered she loved the slide and went down about 15 times. Ember taught her how to swing higher. Declan pushed them both on the merry-go-round until they were dizzy from spinning. Then they went to the park's snack bar. Declan bought ice cream for all 3, vanilla for him, chocolate for Ember, strawberry for June. They sat at a picnic table under a large tree. "This is the best day of my life," June said, licking the ice cream that was dripping down the cone. "Why?" Ember asked. "Because no one ever taught me how to ride a bike before, and I've never eaten ice cream in the park." Declan felt his chest tighten. So many firsts for a 5-year-old, so many simple, normal experiences that June had never had. "We'll have to do this more often then," he said. "Every Saturday?" June asked, hopeful. "Every Saturday we can," Declan promised. On the way home, the girls were tired from all the running around. Declan settled them in the back seat and started driving slowly, enjoying the ride. After 5 minutes, he glanced in the rearview mirror and saw they had fallen asleep. June was leaning against Ember, her head on her friend's shoulder. Ember had a protective arm around June. They were both breathing slowly, relaxed, safe. Declan slowed down even more. He didn't want this moment to end. He wanted to drive forever with his 2 daughters sleeping in the back seat, tired from a perfect day at the park. When he stopped at a red light, he looked at himself in the rearview mirror. He was smiling, a calm, satisfied, completely peaceful smile. He couldn't remember the last time he had felt this way. He was happy, genuinely, completely happy. It wasn't a temporary or forced happiness. It was the deep happiness of someone who had found his place in the world. The place of a father to 2 girls who loved each other like sisters, who trusted him, who made him a better person just by existing. The light turned green. Declan drove home slowly, carefully, carrying his most precious treasure in the back seat. When they arrived, the girls were still asleep. He carried them one at a time into the house, put each one in her bed, took off their shoes, and covered them with a light sheet. Then he stood in the doorway between the two rooms, watching his daughters sleep. Tomorrow, he would have to deal with social workers, papers, bureaucracy, but today had been perfect. And for now, that was enough. It was almost midnight when Declan heard footsteps in the hallway. He was in the living room, on the sofa, trying to read some work emails on his laptop but unable to concentrate. His mind was still at the park, on June's smile when she learned to ride a bike. On the way, the two of them slept in the car. "Daddy?" Ember appeared at the living room door in her pajamas, hair messy from sleep. She was holding the teddy bear she slept with every night. "Hi, sweetie. Why are you awake?" "I can't sleep." Declan closed the laptop and made room on the sofa. "Come here." Ember snuggled up next to him, resting her head on his shoulder. They stayed like that for a few minutes, in silence. Declan stroked her hair, like he used to when she was smaller and had nightmares. "Thinking about something?" he asked. "Want to tell me?" Ember was quiet for a moment, as if organizing her thoughts. "Daddy, do you remember Mommy?" The question caught Declan by surprise. Ember didn't talk much about her mother. In the first few months after Sarah died, she would ask when Mommy was coming back. Then she stopped asking. Declan had always thought she had forgotten, or was too young to really understand. "I do. Every day. I remember too. Not a lot, but I remember." "What do you remember?" "She used to sing to me before bed. And she smelled like flowers, and she made me pancakes on Sundays." Declan felt his throat tighten. Sarah really did make pancakes every Sunday, a tradition he never managed to keep up after she died. "She loved you very much," he said. "I know, and I loved her too." Ember lifted her head and looked at her father. "But Daddy, I'm going to tell you something." "What is it?" Ember took his hand and held it tight, her small, warm hands against his. "June helps me not miss Mommy so much." The words came out quietly, as if it were an important secret. Declan looked at his daughter, surprised. "How so, sweetie?" "You know when I used to get sad? When I saw other girls with their moms and I remembered I didn't have mine." Declan nodded. He knew he had seen Ember get quiet after some birthday parties, after school events where other mothers were present. "Now when I get sad, June is with me. We talk, we play, and then I'm not sad alone anymore." "Does June get sad sometimes too?" "She does. She misses her parents too. So we get sad together, but then it doesn't hurt as much." Declan tried to process what he was hearing. Ember, at 5 years old, had found in June not just a friend or a sister, but someone who understood her pain in a way he never could. "And you know what else?" Ember continued. "By what?" "She filled a space in here." Ember touched her chest right over her heart. "What space?" "The empty space that was left when Mommy went away." "It's not that I forgot Mommy. She's still here." Ember touched her heart again. "But now June is here too, and it doesn't hurt so much anymore." Declan felt his eyes fill with tears. He couldn't speak. He pulled Ember into a hug and just held her, processing the profound wisdom he had just heard. "Daddy, are you crying?" "I am, but it's from happiness." "Why?" "Because you just told me the most beautiful thing I've ever heard." Ember pulled away to look at his face. "Is that true?" "It's true." "And do you feel the same way?" Declan thought about the question. He thought about how the house had changed since June arrived, how he himself had changed, how he had started laughing again, participating, being interested in things beyond work and the basic duties of a father. "I do," he said. "June filled a space in here too." Ember smiled and snuggled back against him. "So she can stay forever. I will do everything in my power to make sure she stays. Promise?" "I promise." After Ember went back to bed, Declan stayed in the living room for another hour, thinking. His daughter's words echoed in his mind. June had filled a space, not just in Ember's life, but in his too. He picked up the laptop again, but instead of opening work emails, he started researching custody process, adoption, parental rights. Every article he read made him more determined. On Monday morning, after taking the girls to the park, because now June was also entitled to morning outings, Declan called the social worker. "Sandra, it's Declan Rhodes. I want to start the official custody process for June." "I'm glad to hear that, Mr. Rhodes. When can you come in to discuss the next steps?" "Today, if possible." "Is this afternoon good?" "Perfect." That afternoon, Declan sat in the social worker's office with a folder full of documents: Ember's birth certificate, proof of income, medical records, work references, everything he could to prove he was a responsible and capable father. "Are you sure about this?" Sandra asked. "It's a long, complicated process. It will require evaluations, home visits, interviews. I'm sure. And what if we find June's biological family during the process?" Declan had to consider that possibility. If a family that truly wanted June, that would be good for her, showed up, I would have to accept it. But from the story she told me, I don't believe that will happen. "And June? How does she feel about staying with you?" "She's happy. For the first time since I met her, she seems like a normal child. She plays, laughs, trusts." Sandra jotted some things down on a form. "I'll open the case then. Temporary custody first, then we'll see about adoption." Declan stopped signing papers. "Adoption? You hadn't thought about that?" He had thought about it, of course, but always as something distant, hypothetical. Hearing the word out loud, in an official context, made it all seem more real. "I don't know if it would come to that. Mr. Rhodes, from what I observed in our first conversation and from what I'm seeing today, you don't just want to take care of June temporarily. You want her to be your daughter." Declan was quiet. Sandra was right. Sometime between June's first night in his house and that moment in the office, June had stopped being a child he was helping and had become his daughter. "Let's take it slow," Sandra said. "Custody first. Then, if all goes well, we can talk about adoption." On the way home, Declan drove, and thinking about what Ember had said the night before, June had filled a space. And he was starting an official process to ensure she never left their lives again. It wasn't adoption yet. He wasn't yet talking about officially making June a Rhodes, but the path was being laid. And it wasn't just a legal, bureaucratic path. It was a path of the heart. The phone rang on a Thursday morning while Declan was making breakfast and the girls were playing in the living room. He looked at the number on the screen and recognized it immediately. Sandra, the social worker. "Good morning, Mr. Rhodes." "Good morning, Sandra. I need to talk to you about a development in June's situation." Declan felt his stomach tighten. For the past few weeks, everything had been so peaceful. The custody process was moving along well. June was blossoming. Life had found a perfect rhythm. He should have known something could change. What kind of development? "A woman came to our office yesterday. She claims to be June's aunt. She brought documents that seemed to prove the relationship." Declan's world stopped for a moment. He glanced toward the living room, where he could hear Ember explaining to June how to build a tower with blocks, their voices mingling in a conversation that had become the soundtrack of his home. What does she want? For now, she just wants to see June, to talk to her, to understand the current situation. And after that, we don't know yet. She said she needs to see how June is doing, talk to us, and understand the whole situation before making any decisions. Declan sat down in a kitchen chair, his legs suddenly weak. How did she find out where June was? Apparently, she hired a private investigator a few months ago. She's been looking for June ever since she found out she had disappeared from the foster care system. A private investigator? Declan repeated the words, trying to process. So she was really looking. It seems so. Mr. Rhodes, I know this is difficult, but when? She would like to meet June this week. It could be at your house, if you allow it. We think it would be less traumatic for June to meet her aunt in a familiar environment. And if I don't allow it? Mr. Rhodes, if she is indeed June's biological relative, she has legal rights. It's better that we do this amicably. Declan closed his eyes, feeling the weight of the legal reality that had always been there, but that he had managed to ignore for the last few months. She seems... What is she like? Sincere, emotional. Worried about June. She didn't give me the impression of someone who wants to cause trouble. Okay. When? How about Saturday afternoon? That way June won't be worried about school or other activities. Saturday is fine. After hanging up, Declan stood in the kitchen, trying to process the information. An aunt, June's biological family. Someone who had more legal right to her than he did. Someone who had hired an investigator to find her. Daddy. Is everything okay? Ember appeared in the kitchen doorway, looking concerned. She had developed a keen intuition for when something was wrong. It is, sweetie. Who was on the phone? Declan looked at his daughter. How could he explain that everything they had built as a family might be about to change? How could he prepare a 5-year-old for the possibility of losing her sister? It was about June. Someone from her family showed up. Ember's eyes widened. Family? But she said she didn't have any family. It seems she has an aunt. Is the aunt going to take June away? The question Declan dreaded most. I don't know, Ember. She just wants to meet June first. Ember was quiet for a moment, processing. Her face went through several expressions. Surprise, fear, determination. I won't let her, she said finally. Ember, I won't let anyone take June away. She's my sister. Ember ran back to the living room. Declan followed her and saw her whispering something in June's ear. June stopped playing and looked at Declan with eyes that immediately filled with fear. Is it true? Did someone from my family show up? Declan knelt to their level. A woman who says she's your aunt showed up. She wants to meet you. I don't want to see her, June said immediately. Why not? Because if she's my aunt, why didn't she look for me before? Why did she leave me alone on the street? It was a question Declan didn't know how to answer. Maybe she didn't know where you were. Or maybe she didn't want to find me, June said, her voice growing small and scared. Ember sat next to June and held her hand. You don't have to go with her if you don't want to. But what if I have to? Declan looked at the two girls, his family, the family that had formed out of nowhere and now seemed more real than anything he had ever had in his life. Let's see what she wants first, then we'll decide. The next 2 days were tense. June became quieter, more clingy. She went back to sleeping with her ragged doll every night, a habit that had diminished in recent weeks. Ember became even more protective, not leaving June's side for a minute. Declan tried to keep the routine normal, but his mind was always racing. What if the aunt was a good person? What if she really loved June and wanted to take care of her? How could he compete with biological family? How could he explain to a judge that June belonged here, with them, when a blood relative wanted to take her? Friday night, he was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, when he heard footsteps in the hall. June appeared at his bedroom door, holding the doll. Daddy, can I sleep here tonight? Of course you can. She snuggled up beside him, small and warm. They were silent for a few minutes. Daddy? Yes. If I have to go away, will you miss me? Declan's heart broke. June, you're not going to have to go away. But what if the aunt says I have to? Then we'll fight. We'll do everything possible for you to stay. Promise. I promise. June nestled closer to him. I don't remember much about Aunt Maggie. I just remember she wasn't there when I needed her. Saturday came too quickly. Declan had spent the morning trying to distract the girls, but it was obvious everyone was nervous. Ember barely ate at lunch. June didn't touch her food. At 2 in the afternoon, a woman knocked on the door. Declan opened it and saw a woman in her 40s, with simple brown hair tied in a ponytail, wearing basic but clean and well-kept clothes. She seemed nervous, but there was something genuinely kind in her eyes. She carried a small purse and a bouquet of flowers. Mr. Rhodes, I'm Margaret Collins. June's aunt. Please come in. Margaret entered slowly, looking around the house carefully. Declan noticed how she observed everything. The girls, drawings on the fridge, the toys organized in a basket, the photos of Ember that now included June, the small shoe forgotten under the hall table. It's a beautiful house, she said, her voice filled with emotion. It seems happy. It seems like a home. Thank you. The flowers are for June, she said, offering the bouquet. Sunflowers. They were my sister's favorite flowers, June's mother. Declan took the flowers, touched by the gesture. She'll like them. The girls were in the living room, pretending to play but clearly listening to everything. Declan called them. Ember, June, come meet Margaret. Ember came first, protective as always, her chin held high in an expression Declan recognized as her "nobody's going to hurt my family" stance. June stayed behind her, only her face visible, her eyes wide and scared. Margaret looked at June and her eyes filled with tears she tried to hold back. June. My dear, you've grown so much. June looked at her for a long moment. Declan could see that she recognized the woman, but she didn't seem happy about it. It was more like she was seeing a ghost from the past. Hi, Aunt Maggie, June said, her voice almost inaudible. You remember me? June nodded, but took a step back, hiding even more behind Ember. Margaret noticed the movement, and her expression turned sad, but understanding. She slowly knelt down to the girl's level. It's okay, my love. I understand. You don't really know me that well. These are for you, Declan said, offering the flowers to June. June looked at the flowers with curiosity. So why? Because they were your mummy's favorite flowers, Margaret explained softly. June took the flowers and smelled them. They smell nice. Your mother always said sunflowers were like little sons you could have in your house. For the first time, June smiled a little. They sat in the living room, Margaret in an armchair, Declan on the sofa with the girls on either side of him. Ember never let go of June's hand for a moment. June, Margaret said softly, I'm so sorry I didn't find you sooner. When I heard what happened to your parents, I tried to find you, but you had already left the first home and then the second. Nobody knew where you were. June didn't answer, just kept looking at her aunt. I traveled a lot for work, Margaret continued. I worked for a company that built bridges, and I would be away from home for 6 months at a time. When I came back from my last trip and heard about the accident, you had already disappeared from the system. Why didn't you want me before? June asked, finally. Margaret seemed surprised by the direct question. What do you mean, dear? When my parents died, why didn't you take me to live with you right away? Margaret took a deep breath, the tears finally escaping. Because I traveled 6 months a year for work. Because I lived in a small apartment, with no yard, no space for a child. Because I thought other families could give you things I couldn't. She looked around the living room again, at the toys, the evidence of a structured family life. I was wrong, she said. I should have tried to change my life to include you. I should have stopped traveling, changed jobs, anything, but I thought you would be happier with a real family. I have a real family, June said, looking at Declan and Ember. Margaret followed June's gaze and nodded slowly. I can see that. I see how they look at you, how you sit close to them. I see that you feel safe. June is my sister, Ember said, speaking for the first time, and nobody is taking her away. Margaret looked at Ember, this small but fierce child who was protecting June like a lioness protecting her cubs. You must love June very much, Margaret said. I do, she's the best sister in the world. And you, June, are you happy here? June nodded vigorously. Very happy. Daddy takes care of me and Ember teaches me things and we play and go to the park and I have my own room and you're never leaving, Ember completed. Margaret smiled through her tears. I can see you love each other very much. They talked for another hour. Margaret told stories about June's parents, how they met, what they were like as kids, little details June had never heard. She showed photos she brought in a small bag, images of June's parents at various moments in their lives. June listened with interest, but always by Ember's side, always close to Declan. She never physically approached Margaret, even when her aunt showed photos that clearly sparked her curiosity. This one is from the last time I saw you, Margaret said, showing a photo of June at 3 years old at a birthday party. You were wearing a blue dress and wouldn't stop running. I remember that party, June said. There was strawberry cake. There was. Tyus ate 3 pieces. June smiled, a happy memory emerging. When Margaret prepared to leave, she asked to speak with Declan in private. Mr. Rhodes, she said in the yard, out of the girls' hearing, thank you for taking care of June. You don't have to thank me. She is. She has become my daughter. Margaret nodded. I can see that. And I can see how safe she feels here. She was never like that with me. She was always quieter, more distant. I thought it was just shyness. But now I realize she never felt completely safe. What do you plan to do? Margaret looked through the living room window, where June and Ember were sitting together on the sofa, looking through the photos she had left. I'll be honest with you. When I found out June was alive and well, my first reaction was to want to take her with me. She's family. She's all I have left of my siblings. I spent months imagining what it would be like to have her back, how I could make up for all the lost time. Declan felt his chest tighten. But, Margaret continued, seeing her here, seeing how she relates to you both, seeing the way she runs behind Ember when she's nervous, the way she looks at you as if you're her safe harbor, it would be cruel to take her from here. She has found a family that truly loves her. So I'm going to do the right thing. The thing I should have done 3 years ago. And in court, what will you say? Margaret looked at him with determination. I'll tell the truth, that June is where she needs to be. The following week, they all met at the courthouse. June stayed with an employee in a separate room while the adults spoke with the judge. It was the same Judge Hamilton who had granted temporary custody months ago. Margaret was there with a lawyer who seemed more nervous than she was. Declan was with Dr. Martinez, and Sandra represented social services. The judge read the documents, asked a few questions about June's situation, about the custody process Declan had started, about the circumstances that led to June being on the street. Miss Collins, the judge said finally, according to the documents presented, you are the only known living relative of June. You spent months looking for her. Do you wish to seek custody of the child? Margaret stood up slowly. She looked at Declan, then at Sandra, then at the judge. The silence in the room was absolute. No, she said, her voice firm but emotional. She is fine with them. Better than she has ever been. Better than she would be with me. I just want to be able to visit her. If they'll let me. The judge seemed genuinely surprised. Are you sure she is your niece and your biological family? I am sure. Family isn't just about blood, Your Honor. It's about who takes care of you, who loves you, who is there when you need them. Mr. Rhodes and his daughter are June's family now. I had my chance 3 years ago and I didn't know how to take it. The judge looked at Declan. And you, Mr. Rhodes, do you agree to visits? I completely agree, Declan said without hesitation. June has a right to know her history, her biological family, and Margaret seems to be a good person who truly cares about June. Very well. Considering Ms. Collins's formal relinquishment of custody rights and taking into account the best interests of the child, I grant final legal custody of June Collins to Declan Rhodes. Margaret Collins will have the right to regular visits, to be arranged amicably between the parties. Outside the courthouse, Margaret hugged Declan. Thank you, she said, for doing this the right way, for not fighting me, even though you had every reason to. June needs you in her life too, Declan said, just in a different way, as an aunt, not as a guardian. Can I come visit on Sunday? Of course. Actually, we usually make pancakes on Sundays. It's a new tradition. Margaret smiled through her tears. June always loved pancakes. And I make the best chocolate chip pancakes in the world. Then on Sunday, you bring the ingredients. That night, after telling the girls everything, that the custody was final, that Margaret could visit, that nothing would change in their lives, Declan tucked June into bed. Daddy, she said as he was about to leave the room. Yes, I like Aunt Maggie, but I didn't want to live with her. Why? Because this is my home. You are my family and Ember is my sister. If I went to live with Aunt Maggie, I wouldn't be Ember's sister anymore. Declan kissed her forehead. And we will always be your family. Forever. The following Sunday, Margaret arrived at 10 in the morning with ingredients for pancakes and more photos of June's parents. She sat in the kitchen with the girls while Declan cooked, telling them how June's father would make funny voices when he read stories, how her mother sang in the shower. It was different from what Declan had imagined when he learned that biological family had appeared. It wasn't a battle, a loss, a competition. It was just more love in June's life. And that he could not only accept, but celebrate. 4 months had passed since the hearing with Margaret. 4 months of Sunday visits, of chocolate chip pancakes, of June hearing stories about her biological parents while safe in Declan's lap. 4 months of paperwork, interviews, and evaluations to finalize the adoption process. And now, on a sunny July morning, they were in the car on their way to the courthouse for what would be the final hearing. The hearing that would officially make June a Rhodes. "Today's the day," Declan said, looking in the rearview mirror. June was in the back seat, wearing a light blue dress that Margaret had bought especially for the occasion. Ember was next to her, wearing a yellow dress just like the one she had worn to her own first hearing years ago. "I'm nervous," June admitted, clutching her ragged doll. "Why?" Ember asked. "You already live with us. You're already my sister. Today it just becomes official on paper. But what if something goes wrong?" "Nothing will go wrong," Ember said with absolute conviction. "I won't let it," Declan smiled. Ember had become the most determined 5-year-old he knew when it came to protecting June. "And after I become a real Rhodes, what changes?" June asked. "Nothing," Declan said. "You're already our family. Today we're just getting a paper to prove it." "And can I choose my middle name?" "You can. I want to be June Sarah Rhodes." Declan felt his chest tighten. Sarah, the name of the wife he had lost. June had asked for this a few weeks ago after Ember told her about her mother. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. Ember said her mommy would be my mommy now, too. And I want to have her name." Ember held June's hand. "Mommy would have liked you very much." "You think so?" "I'm sure. She always wanted me to have a sister." At the courthouse, they found Sandra and Dr. Martinez waiting. Margaret arrived a few minutes later, carrying a camera and a small wrapped gift. "My dear," she said, hugging June, "the big day has come." "I'm nervous, Aunt Maggie." "That's normal, but just look." Margaret pointed to Declan and Ember. "Look how many people love you. Today you're going to get an official family." "I already have a family." "I know. Today it just becomes even more official." They went up to Judge Hamilton's chambers. June knew this room well by now. She had been here a few times in recent months for interviews and evaluations. The judge always spoke directly to her, treating her like an important person whose opinions mattered. "Good morning, future Rhodes family," the judge said as they entered. June smiled, hearing future Rhodes family. They sat in the front chairs, June between Declan and Ember, as always. Margaret sat behind them, along with Sandra and the lawyer. "Oh, well, the judge began. "We are here today to finalize the adoption of June Collins by Declan Rhodes. June Dye, do you know what this means? It means I'm going to be a real June Rhodes, and that Daddy will be my dad on paper too." "Exactly. And do you want that?" "I want it very much." "Why do you want to be adopted by Mr. Rhodes?" June thought for a moment. "Well, because he saved me when I was alone. Because he takes care of me when I'm sick. Because he teaches me things. Because he loves me even when I mess up. And because Ember is my best friend and my sister. And I want to have the same name as her." The judge smiled. "Those are very good reasons." She turned to Declan. "Mr. Rhodes, are you prepared to be legally June's father, to assume all rights and responsibilities?" "I am," Declan said. "She's been my daughter for months. Today, we're just making it official." "Ember," the judge said, "how do you feel about June officially becoming your sister?" "She already is my sister," Ember said, "since the first day. But it'll be cool to have it written on paper." The judge picked up a pen and began signing documents. Then she pushed papers toward Declan. "Mr. Rhodes, sign here, here, and here." Declan signed each page carefully. June and Ember watched every movement of the pen as if they were watching magic happen. "Done," the judge said, stamping the last page. "By the power vested in me, I declare the adoption officially finalized. June D., you are now legally June Sarah Rhodes." Ember immediately grabbed June's hand, as she always did when something important happened. "Now your name is Rhodes too," Ember said, smiling. June looked at her, then at Declan, then back at Ember. The brightest smile Declan had ever seen lit up her face. "Now we're real sisters," June exclaimed. The two threw themselves into each other's arms right there in the judge's chambers. Ember laughed loudly. June too. It was pure laughter. unmixed joy, complete happiness. Declan felt his eyes well up with tears. 6 months ago, June barely spoke. Now she was shouting with joy about being Ember's real sister. "Come here, my daughters," he said, opening his arms. June and Ember ran to him. He pulled them into a tight hug, one on each side. He stroked their hair, kissed both their foreheads, feeling the weight and perfection of the moment. "There," he said, his voice emotional. "And now we are officially a family." "We already were," June said, "but now there's paper and a stamp." Everyone laughed. Margaret was crying. Sandra was wiping her eyes. Even the judge seemed moved. "June Rhodes," the judge said, handing an official document to June. "This is your adoption certificate. Keep it safe." June held the paper as if it were made of gold. "How can I show it to everyone?" "You can show it to whoever you want," the judge said. Outside the courthouse, Margaret took dozens of photos, Declan holding both girls, June showing off her certificate, Ember and June hugging. "These are going straight into the family album," Margaret said. "We have a family album?" June asked. "We do now," Declan said. "We'll buy a really big one." In the car on the way home, the girls didn't stop talking. June Rhodes, Ember sang. "June Sarah Rhodes." "The Rhodes sisters," said June. "Ember Rhodes and June Rhodes." "Forever," said Ember. "Forever," June agreed. Declan drove, listening to their happiness, feeling a complete sense of peace. It wasn't the same family he had with Sarah. It was a new family, built in a way he never imagined possible. At home, they celebrated with a cake Margaret had baked. June insisted on signing her new name on everything she could find: old papers, napkins, her own hand. "I have to practice," she explained. That night at bedtime, Declan went to both rooms to say goodnight. "Thank you, Daddy," said Ember. "For what?" "For making June our official sister." "Thank you, Daddy," June echoed from the next room, "for giving me a real family." Declan stood in the hallway between the two rooms, listening to the soft breathing of his daughters. The adoption was finalized. The papers were signed, stamped, official. But the important part had happened long before, on a night when a little girl asked if another little girl could be her sister. Now they were 3 Rhodes. The family was complete, on paper and in their hearts, forever. 3 months after the official adoption, the Rhodes house was a completely different place. The walls that were once white and bare were now covered in colorful drawings. The family self-portrait June made at school, 3 stick figures with enormous smiles. Ember's drawing of her and June at the park. Her painting the two of them made together on a rainy afternoon, mixing colors to create what they called a friendship rainbow. The living room table was always full of projects, half-finished puzzles, open coloring books, modeling clay spread out. Toys appeared in the most unexpected places: a doll on the sofa, blocks under the table, crayons on the windowsill. And there were smells. The house always smelled like something good now: cookies in the oven, soup on the stove, the fabric softener from the little clothes that were always being washed. Declan still worked, but he had changed completely. He used to stay at the office late, bring work home, answer emails on Sundays. Now, he was home by 5:30. Weekends were sacred, family time, no exceptions. "Mr. Rhodes," his secretary said one Friday, "the client wants to reschedule for Saturday." "I can't on Saturday. He's an important client. My family is more important." He had discovered that working less didn't make him less productive. When he was at the office, he was more efficient because he knew he had a time to be home. And at home, real life was waiting. Ember and June, who had become sisters in the fullest sense of the word. They played together, inventing elaborate games. Last week, they turned the living room into a spaceship using cushions and sheets. Ember was the captain, June was the engineer, and they traveled to 6 different planets in one afternoon, but they also fought like real sisters. "It's my turn to pick the movie," Ember shouted one Tuesday. "No, it's not. You picked yesterday," June yelled back. "Liar." "It's true." The two of them sulked, each in her own corner of the sofa. Declan was about to intervene when Ember sighed. "Okay, you pick, but I pick the popcorn." "Deal, but I pick where we sit." And just like that, they made up, negotiating like 5-year-old diplomats. Last week, June took Ember's favorite bear without asking. "June, that's Mr. Snuggles. You can't take him without asking." "Sorry, I just wanted to hug him." "You have to ask first." "Can I hug him now?" "You can, but next time ask." June returned the bear. Ember gave her a kiss on the cheek, and 2 minutes later they were playing together again. This was exactly how sisters behaved. They fought over silly things, made up quickly, and at the end of the day they slept in each other's rooms when they heard thunder. Sundays had become special. Margaret would arrive at 10 in the morning, carrying ingredients for new recipes and stories about June's family. She had fit naturally into the rhythm of the house. "Aunt Maggie, tell the story about June's dad when he was little," Ember would ask. "Which one? The one about the fish he caught or the time he got lost in the supermarket?" "Both," the girls would say in unison. Margaret would make pancakes and tell stories that made June laugh and sometimes cry a little, but it was a good cry, of longing mixed with love. "Your dad used to do that too," she would say when she saw June stacking her pancakes. "He never ate food normally. He had to make architecture out of everything." June would smile, happy to discover she had inherited something from her parents, besides their dark eyes. Margaret never tried to be June's mother. She respected the place that Declan and Ember occupied. But she brought something precious, a connection to the past, stories, roots. One Thursday afternoon, Declan came home to silence. For a moment, he felt the old tightness in his chest. Where were the girls? Then he heard laughter from the garden. He went to the window and saw Ember and June playing hide-and-seek among the trees. June was trying to hide behind a trunk that was too thin. Ember pretended not to see her. Where could June be hiding? Could she be behind this tiny rock? June giggled softly. Or behind this leaf? More muffled laughter. "Ah, I found you. You were behind the tree." "Now it's my turn," said June, running to the base. Declan stood watching. June ran to the tree with her eyes closed, counting to 10. Ember chose a spot where June could easily find her. It was an ordinary Thursday afternoon. 2 sisters playing in the backyard, the most normal thing in the world, and that was exactly what made the moment perfect. Declan thought of the silent house from 2 years ago, of the man he was then, running on autopilot, living without truly living, of the question that changed everything. "Daddy, can she be my sister?" Ember didn't know it, but that night she hadn't just saved June, she had saved him too. The girls kept playing until the sun went down. They came inside for dinner, sweaty and happy, with grass on their clothes and smiles that lit up the house. During dinner, they talked about school, friends, the teacher with curly hair. Declan listened to every word, participated in every conversation, laughed at the jokes that only a 5-year-old can invent. After baths, stories, and goodnight kisses, Declan went back to the garden. He stood where he had been earlier, looking at the space where his daughters had played. The house behind him was full of life now, full of laughter and discoveries and love, full of drawings on the fridge and scattered toys, full of family. "Love arrived when I least expected it," he whispered into the silent night, "and it saved us all." A breeze rustled the trees. Through the window he could see the lamplight illuminating the bedroom doors where his daughters slept safely. Tomorrow would be Friday. Margaret would come on Sunday. Life would go on, simple and perfect, full of ordinary moments that were extraordinary precisely because they were common. Declan Rhodes smiled into the night and went inside his home. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next ones. Leave a like because it helps this story get recommended to more people. See you in the next story.